I think the recording is on now, and the session can be begin at the very moment. So, hi everybody. Welcome to another philosophy session. I am Tendo K, and I hope we have a very good session today, and we'll be able to discuss ideas properly, just like we always do in these kinds of sessions. If you guys don't know how the sessions, these kind of like streams go, basically I just pick a topic. It can be random. It can be just personal or like in personal sense that like it's relatable, I guess, and or it can just be about what's fascinating, but it's mostly just random, and I just pick those accordingly, and we just happen to have a discussion about that. That's great. So today's session is something that I have prolonged and I have kept by myself for a pretty long time because it's a big topic, and then I think I've already mentioned something about freedom last time, but we didn't go into too much details about it because, as I have said, it's a very huge topic, and I wanted to do it as much justice as possible, but that's probably not going to be the case even today. So I hope you guys can understand that. Anyways, so today we're gonna be talking about liberty, and I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that like for a couple of days from now on, we're probably gonna do a lot of philosophy sessions. It's mostly because I decided that I really need to have more training when it comes to discussing certain ideas after I did the one on Marxism, and I was actually quite disappointed about that because I didn't think I did it quite justice that day, and here we are right now, and I hope that I can try to learn from what I've done from the past and then like have a better discussion, or at least have introduced ideas in a better way. If not, well, whatever. Before we continue, I can't really seem to see the stream going well, so I'm just gonna check if the stream is going connected. It's apparently it's not lagging because the byte rate is still up, but I can never be too certain, especially if you know what? No, it's okay. I'll just check. I was about to say that like if no one is gonna be able to tell me whether or not the stream is going well now. I think it's going well now. Hold on, if it's playing, then it's working. Okay, it's working. All right. So Liberty, what is it? Hi, Nekamiki. How are you today? It's been a long time since we came from this kind of session, right? It's been quite a long time. What, bro? What do you mean, what, bro? I was just telling we were gonna talk about philosophy. This is not the first time that you came to these kind of sessions, right? If you guys don't know, this kind of places is like I try to calm myself as much as possible because like unfortunately my incredibly messed up mind that jumbles all over the place is not very suitable for these kind of like one-to-one chats, and we have a discussion, especially with ideas as controversial as liberty and Marxism from last time, and it's just like that. It's pretty better, in my opinion, to be as calm and natural as possible, and then just have a natural discussion. At least in the sense that like we just have the only thing that we can agree on is like there's no real right answer, and then that's the case for liberty today. So let's begin. What is liberty? Who wants to be the first one to answer that apart from me? I can't answer this. It's a very subjective thing. Like liberty is based around freedom, and freedom is based around liberty. It's kind of like interchangeable. So it can either be, oh, you can just say liberty is freedom, or like freedom is liberty. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really answer the question about what those general things are. So what do you guys think? What's your idea on this? This is just the very beginning. We need to like have a foundation of like where we want to start. Hmm. Well, I guess liberty in a sense is basically just being allowed to do whatever we want. Yeah. Yes, Nekomiki. I'm not a teacher. I am totally not a teacher. It's too fast. Oh, sorry. Hi everybody. Hi everybody. So, hi. uh, let's start again. What do you guys think liberty is? What do you guys think liberty is? That's like, can I ask you to check my PowerPoint presentation? No, Nix. No, Nis. No, Nix. I will. There's no sticks long enough. I will just keep my distance way the heck away from that. Like, way away. But I'm actually kind of curious now. What's your presentation about, just in case? Bro, I do not want to put pressure. It's for your own safety, for my own safety. yeah, still not worth it. I'm sorry. It's still not worth it, but like it's about mustard. What's a mustard bait? What's a mustard bite tongue? What's a mustard button? What does that mean? And how and even if I understood what that meant, even if I understood what that meant, how is that involved with my safety? I love how weird my entire stream fan base is. But yeah. Good luck on your presentation. I have no it's the must. I'm so confused. I'm so confused. Okay, who's like I'm like this is I hope okay then whether it's a presentation that's worth it or not, I hope you are able to get some inspiration from how I do things. I'm not a very good presenter, by the way. I'm not a very good presenter, so I'm just like I'm pretty much a novice, just like you. No matter the topic, so I, I won't be much of a help, but I don't know. Maybe listening to this and having a discussion on this topic is gonna help as well. Anyway, so man, my mind has like way off track. So liberty. So if nobody has an answer right now as to what liberty is, then I guess we can start out by saying that it's just kind of the way to being allowed to do whatever you please or like what you want. So we were talking about freedom last time when I did a similar stream like this, but I don't think we went into liberty because liberty is basically more akin to government based and political based, which we'll get into today as well. But basically, just the having the ability and just with no one preventing you from doing what you want, and I guess that's liberty. Does everybody agree with that so far, or do you guys want to say there's something I've missed out? Come on, don't be shy. It's not often that I get to have chats while I do these kind of sessions, so it's like a free country with no law. Kind of like that. We'll get into more details like that, but in philosophical terms, apparently that is called the state of nature. And state of nature, I think I discussed this idea when I was talking about Hobbesian philosophy. And if you have not went to see that stream yet, then basically it's about how it's just basically state of nature is just when there is no state and how people would have lived in such a situation if there was no state. Now, like I said, what's the difference between living in the jungle? Well, living in the jungle is one key thing, but there is a huge debate around whether or not the state of nature was ever a thing. Like when we go back throughout human history, were we ever not have a state? Did we ever never have the state before? Or like were we always inside the community? Or like were you guys always in the community when you guys were when your ancestors as well? So there's a huge debate about whether the state of nature was even a thing and whether you guys or we can even comprehend it. So like for example, just because you're in a jungle doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be stateless. And the fact is that you can still probably make a community if you wanted to, as long as you're not living by yourself, I guess. So there's a key to that as well. So it's not as basic as just jungle, but kind of. Yeah, basically, kind of. But yeah, jungle. It's not about the place that you're in. It's just about the lack of state and the lack of control. Jungle has community as well. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So it's like state of nature, but the state of nature is not really akin to plants and animals. Yeah. And the main debate around the state of nature is the fact that humans are not exactly animals because there's a debate about whether or not we are social beings, And social beings have always the requirement to be within a state and within a community at least, because apparently that is the way they give meaning to their own lives. But that's the purpose of a human. While animals are able to live and then prosper inside the state of nature, for example, humans prosper in the community, which is a very debatable term, but because there's no real example of when people were outside of society and state, it's hard to argue against it as well, because like the only example of humans right now are those within states, and whether or not you'll be happy in a state of nature is completely debatable. And liberty, and this is where we have to put up another point, is the fact that I thought there were cases some people were out of society. Yeah, and we're gonna start talking about that as well. But there's not really a state right now where you can actually completely leave society, especially when every single land in the world at least is controlled by the authority figure, and the government has ownership of every single land. So there isn't any state right now, or like any place on earth at least, that is not controlled. You know, not all, bro. Okay, Joe. Okay, enlighten me. Where like you can tell me some places. I'm not Joe. I don't know geography. I barely know philosophy, and I actually, you know what? I don't even know philosophy. So there is a case. There's like when I was like reading at least some part in the sea, maybe. Yeah, that's what we call anarchism. Like the state is still there, but nobody is a higher authority figure according to the state. So like everybody owns the sea equally, but because of that, it's a complete anarchy where because everybody has equal rights to the sea, everybody tries to take as much of for themselves. But that's a whole nother topic. But basically, even under sea, even like in ocean levels, there's like state control and there's still state regulations. And if you break those state regulations, you are gonna be punished to like depending on what kind of sea area you are. I remember there was a father whose daughter wanted to be princess, so he bought a land and made that as a country. Yeah, but the whole act of needing to buy the country means that you are not free from the state, because well, in order for you to buy that country, you're still under regulations of like different states and then different communities that allows you to buy that state. So unfortunately, even under those cases, like the state is always there. No, it was under no one. It was under no one. Want to buy a princess, so he bought a land. So, okay, but how do you buy a land if you don't have anyone to buy it from? I'm actually kind of curious about this. Maybe I'll search it later. But like, you can explain to me right now. Like, how did they buy a land that who did they buy it from? Good question. I know. So even the act of buying itself needs to be from a higher authority figure. I just saw it on the news video. Yeah, but at the end of the day, like even like I'm assuming that like you guys are living in houses right now, but the chances are you don't exactly own your house because like the state can take it away anytime they please. Of course, they need to follow their own laws, but if they really wanted to, they can just take it by themselves without you, because technically you don't own the house, which we'll go into today as well. Like that's part of liberty as well. So what kind of freedom you should be allowed to have within these states, and that's what we mean by liberty. So liberty is a bit different compared to the state of nature, as in the fact that liberty focuses on like what rights and like what kind of freedom you should be allowed to have within the state. So we assume that you guys need to live in the state, so I can be homeless. Yeah, but homelessness, even when you're homeless, you're still controlled because you still have to live under a state. So, for example, if you're living on a road, chances are you still have to follow the regulations of the road. Otherwise, they'll send you to jail. So liberty is about like what you should be allowed to do before like a state is allowed to take your freedom away and then like lock you up or like try to like kill you. And there's a lot of debate about this, Like sure, like some things that people should be free to do. Like many people have debated about whether or not freedom of speech should be, allowed, complete freedom of speech, or like whether people should be allowed to, commit suicide. But that's a very very hardcore topic which we cannot go through in too much depth today. But I think I've already mentioned about suicide last time, so if you guys want to check out that stream, I'm pretty sure it's on the highlights as well. So yeah, just the freedom of what you are allowed to do within like a state system, because we're right now assuming the fact that I remember that was a news. Go ahead. I like you read a lot of weird stuff, man. Where the wife tried to suicide. Okay, okay. Okay, we're touching on this now. We're touching on this now. I hope I hope not too many people are uncomfortable with this, which it's hard today. Then the husband rescued her. Yeah, that's a right. And okay, keep going, keep going. I don't. I'll see where this is going. And there was a law that says what? It's man. This is so saying that whoever suicide, you can't type all this in with one line. Need to be fine. Oh, okay, okay, good. Or jail. Yeah, that's the thing. So what should so basically, yeah, that's a very good example. So what should be illegal, for example, and what should be legal for you to do? What kind of freedom should be allowed and what kind of things shouldn't be allowed? That's the many debates around state. Because the only reason the state really exists is to like enforce certain laws, right? I mean, it's no free to take your life away. Exactly. So so the state is only existence depends on the fact that they monopolized what people should be allowed to do. And because they monopolize it, it's very important to figure out what the people should be allowed to get away with and what the people shouldn't be allowed to get away with, because then it goes on to answer whether a state is truly legitimate or not. And that, in order for us to realize whether or not, having a state is really a good thing, or whether or not, as we discussed just now, that a state of nature might be better. Because what's the point of having a state if it's illegitimate? And if it's illegitimate, you might as well just abandon the state and then just go and then live in the state of nature. Unfortunately, though, that is not possible right now. But we can at least discuss about whether the state is an actual better alternative to the state of nature, if either of them can properly function, or if the state of nature can actually exist. So there's one debate about this. I think the state is there to promote the country. I think the state is there to promote the country's image. Not exactly, because under one of the more famous definition of what a state is those people who monopolizes legitimate violence, and it's a very controversial kind of idea where like the only reason a state is the fact that like it can commit violence and it can commit any kind of atrocities in order for them to have their way. Now, what counts as a legitimate form of violence is what's very controversial in this, because the one thing that we can all agree on is the fact that like it's the state that do own the army, and it's the state that do own the police, and which means that these two things, having control of these two things, gives the state the right to commit violence in order for them to prevent you from doing something, while you cannot do the same for other people. So you can't just, for example, make your own army and then like be allowed to just make your own laws and regulations, because the state will prevent that. But also promote their image as a safe country, right? That depends on what you mean by promote. So there's a competition about nationalism, for example. We can discuss about culture as well, but I was planning to leave that for another stream. But basically, there's a idea about which culture might be better, and the fact that like in order for a state to survive, they need to spread their culture by saying that my culture is a superior one, which is also one of the big reasons for war. If you don't consider like the other big factors such as territorial disputes and all that, because their image is an important way for a state to survive and feel legitimate. However, that is a debate around legitimacy. So for liberty's sake, considering the idea of liberty is a government is legitimate if it allows the person or like citizens within its state to have certain levels of liberty. And the argument to this comes from someone named Arthur Mill, I think, who suggests that the only time when a state is allowed to prevent liberty, or at least prevent you from doing what you want, is when it causes harm to somebody else. And that's one of the more famous examples of why we should protect liberty? And that's the question that we were discussing today. Why is liberty so important? And is liberty actually important, or is it just overrated? You know? We were discussing about freedom last time, and we were like keeping in mind that freedom itself is not always, good, and but that also depends on what you mean by good as well. Like we can all admit that having too much freedom is dangerous to a certain extent, because like as I've suggested just now, that in the state of nature, the reason why the state of nature is so dismissed upon is the fact that like people won't be able to trust one another, because at that point everybody has equal freedom. And if everybody has equal freedom, then they can do whatever they want in order for them to become better off compared to you. And in a world where resources are limited and also freedom itself, but freedom is unlimited, then there's nothing stopping people from killing each other and then like trying to steal from one another to make themselves better off. And that's the idea that Hobbes went into. So if you have not watched that stream about when I discuss about Hobbes, then he discusses about how the state of nature is really, really bad because of this reason. No one will be able to trust one another, and nobody would want to live in it because too much freedom is too dangerous. And because why wouldn't it be? But of course, there's a counter argument to that, is the fact that some philosophers do agree that people are just naturally cooperative, and people would be able to trust one another if they were in the state of nature, and they will be able to cooperate together in order to become better off. It doesn't necessarily have to be because of a state, but because of people's individual cooperations together, they'll be able to do the right thing. Which also depends on the idea that morality exists, and also the fact that the right and wrong exist, and people will be rational enough to believe that working together is always better than just being selfish and ignorant to other people, which is highly contestable. If you have opinions about that, then I would not. Then you'll probably be right in a certain sense. It all depends on just like what you mean by why you want a state, or like do you really need a state. And the main reason that people think that you need a state is because, well, it provides security because they get more benefits than disadvantages, right? Oh yeah, that's also the idea of utilitarianism, and that's actually a good point. Like it also touches on liberty as well. So the reason why, as I said, in this argument, the state is better than having no state at all. But according to liberty, people would still be in a state, be able to do the right thing. And because people are able to do the right thing, it's okay to give them a lot more liberty than the state than you would want to. Then you think that is bad, because people will at least make the right choices by themselves. Now, there's a limit to this, and according to Arthur Miller, that's when people start harming each other. And yeah, you can't, and even that's kind of contestable as well, because now you have to think about what it actually means to harm each other and what it means to be in danger. Like, for example, if somebody were to threaten you but never commits to actually killing you, does the state have the right to stop that? Or like, if you are trying to harm yourself, for example, should the state be allowed to stop you from doing that? What if you decide to go rock climbing without actually knowing the risks? Should the government or the states prevent you from doing that? And this touches upon what we call the utilitarian reason. And the fact is, the reason why liberty is important, because it will ultimately lead to the greater benefit over the worse off. So like, the aim of utilitarianism is basically the only reason that something should be allowed is when, it maximizes happiness over displeasure. Can that be a clear line for people to decide on it? Exactly. So yeah, what counts as benefit, what counts as disadvantage, and all that kind of stuff. So let's just focus on, we'll go back to that in another stream, but let's focus on the liberty principles for now. So according to Arthur Mill, freedom is important because, well, liberty is the way we get new ideas, and new ideas are important, which is very important for the argument for freedom of speech and expression. And according to him, people should be allowed to do what they need to because they themselves are the best judges of what they should be allowed to do. Like, you can have the most perfect state in the world, but unless the state itself knows what the people exactly need and want, then it's still better for basically up to the people to make that decisions for themselves, because the idea of what is right for them and what is right for the individual is not is too complicated for a state to be able to control. People are in the clear to know it. Exactly. We'll come. Exactly. And that's whether the idea of rationality comes in. Like, how like do people themselves, for example, know what's the best for them? And do people realize what's the worst and all that kind of stuff? There's a clear idea that, for example, there's a debate around whether or not people should be forced to wear helmets while they go on the bike, for example, right? Now, are those people not people that don't wear helmets? Are they thinking clearly about their own safety, or are they being irrational by saying that, yeah, I'm totally safe, I'm totally okay gonna be doing that? No. A lot of people do disagree that people are irrational. Irrational, but then you have to start thinking about what it means to be rational and what it means to be irrational. Like, we have to be very certain that, like, if we decide to give more freedom to people, then they'll be able to make the right choice. And the problem with that is the idea of right choice itself is very complicated. And I think we can all agree on that, at least. Like, the idea of right and wrong is too subjective, first of all, and also way too complicated for any person to be able to properly suggest that some person is rational over someone is irrational. There's some like funny comments on YouTube, for example, that says that, oh, if you just go onto the YouTube comments, then you can all see that everybody is irrational on the YouTube comments. And yeah, that can be debated as well. But at the same time, you have to be very confident in your own definition of rationality. And the funny thing about rationality is the fact that, like, regardless of what you think, most likely you're still gonna think that you are rational over everybody else, because, well, why would you ever think that you yourself is irrational? Which means that at the very least, your idea of rationality, it will always have some sort of bias towards it, because you would never want to consider yourself as at least inferior to somebody else, unless you're very confident that you are irrational. But you have to base your idea on something, and unfortunately, the only rational being that you can believe in is yourself at the end of the day, because, well, you're the only person you can trust. So it's really complicated, really. So, but Arthur Mill discusses that even even under such circumstances, liberty is still very important, because, well, just as I mentioned just now, because you're the only person you can truly believe in, you should be able to know better than others, at the very least, that you know what's best for you. Of course, there's a limit to this, as I've said just now. It's all about preventing harm against somebody else. So the only time when a state should be allowed to interfere with your liberty, it should be when they're about to harm somebody else. Now, there's a very complicated philosophy about this. For example, if you were to be able to prove that somebody have a higher chance of killing somebody else over someone else, then does the state have the right to arrest that person and then lock him up because he's a potential danger to society? Apparently, when I was having a discussion about this, some people do say yes, they do. As I mentioned, they do. Some countries does, exactly. So there's some people that does that, but at the same time, you have to be pretty certain that a harm can come. You need to be pretty certain, pretty certain that the harm can come in order for you to be able to justify that. But unfortunately, we don't have time travel machines. Well, maybe I do, but I don't know. But you guys don't have time travel machines, so you can't. So all we can predict is on hindsight. So after the crime or after the harm has taken place, can we ever do something about it? So what limits are there for the state? So if the only time when a state can do prevent is preventing harm, but how would you be able to tell when a harm is about to happen? Like the only time when you can truly tell is after it happened, when after that person has been killed or been hurt, that the state is able to legitimately say that, oh yeah, that person's got hurt, let's do something about it. But at that point, what's the point? The harm has already been done. So like the state has already failed to, for example, to protect that person because they weren't able to tell when the harm has been, when they were about to be harmed. Does that not depend on the percent of the previous cases to predict? Percentage itself is highly complicated and very controversial. Like, yeah, 99.9999% chance that somebody will probably murder someone else. Is that good enough chance for people to arrest that individual? But what if that 99.999% chance of you killing someone is yourself? Are you a menace to society and you should be going to jail for that? And even if that's the case, how would you predict that? Are you gonna predict it through someone's mental capacity, or like someone's prone to violence, or someone's exposure to violent video games and all that kind of stuff? How would you possibly measure that without actually going through someone's liberty of maybe privacy? For example, like, should we say that, like, oh yeah, in order to prevent harm against other people, the state should have the right to go against your privacy and then figure all this information out without even though it's not totally guaranteed. Even though it's not totally guaranteed that like you'll be allowed to do that, as long as we have we have sorry, I don't understand. I don't understand. I mean, I guess you guys can have privacy. Yeah, but just the idea, like FBI. Yeah, I guess it's just about how far should the government go to, what length should the government go to in order to prevent harm. And because liberty, like I said, Arthur Mill suggests that liberty should be enforced, but until the point that harm is about to happen. But as you can see just now, that when harm is actually enacted and when harm is about to happen is far too complicated for any kind of state to be allowed to just go ahead and do whatever it takes to prevent harm. Like, if you want to prevent harm, that's fine. But the thing is, and we can debate about that all we want. But the thing about that is how likely does it need to be, and what kind of length should they actually go to in order to prevent it? Better to be safe. Yeah, there is an argument to that. Yeah, there is definitely an argument to that. Some people say that it should be every single kind of harm, no exceptions, every single harm. So if somebody were to be even a slightly likely that's why we cook food. Yeah, if somebody were to be even slightly likely to cause any kind of harm, then it should all be under state regulation. Now, there's a big problem with that. If that's the case, then who is guaranteed to never harm someone? Like, for example, you might go your entire lives without ever hurting anybody, but are you guaranteed? Are you 100% certain that you are most likely, with every single evidence for you, that you are not gonna hurt someone? And if that's the case, does it have to be physical violence? What about emotional? For example, even robot cannot do that. For example, Nekomiki, you have made fun of me on numerous occasions. Well, albeit I did allow that to do that, and I don't really mind it. But are you 100% certain that every single time when you have made fun of somebody and insulted someone, which I definitely know you've at least done in certain occasions, no offense, are you certain that you have not harmed anyone in the process? Like, who is in this situation like a good citizen? Like, who is, completely 100% pure and innocent? Like, all it takes for anyone to be murderous, what is the point of my life? Like, all it takes for anyone to become murderers is just a very, very bad day and just one single knife, right? That's all it takes for you to be suddenly become a murderer. Just all it takes is just hugely bad day, and then that's just what it causes for you to harm someone. Maybe not physically sometimes as well. Maybe you just have a very bad day and you just wanna just put it on somebody else. That happens. Like, humans are imperfect creatures. And also the fact that what it means to be perfect is so subjective as well, that we need some kind of level if we want to have some kind of liberty. Just want to see blood. Some people just want to see the world burn. But yeah, so the idea of preventing every single harm, like no matter what it takes, is irrational. And if that is truly the aim that all governments should strive for, then there will be no liberty, because it's kind of contradictory. Because the having freedom itself is what allows people to at least have a chance to, murder and kill, to hurt, to violate, to steal. That's the reason why liberty is so dangerous, because it at least gives the people, not necessarily guarantees them, but gives the chance, the opportunity to enact violence with their own by themselves. The only real way to prevent this is by having the state to have every single control of your lives, because that's really the only way for them to decrease that chance to zero. I'm not a teacher, but I do not get it. It's just what I was trying to say is that liberty itself is what probably leads to people having the chance to commit violence. The reason why there's even a 0.0001% chance that Neko Miki, for example, can hurt someone else is because he has at least certain freedom that allows him to do so. And the only way we can prevent that is by having the state to control him 100% of the time. Like, brainwash him, like reprogram his whole entire thing, whatever it takes to like prevent him from ever being able to commit it. To lower that chance as low as possible until it becomes zero. But that also means that liberty is, you can't have liberty, right? It's going to be my judge to think that I hurt someone. Exactly. So we go back to the same idea again. How likely should you be allowed to hurt somebody before somebody can do something about it? It's going to be people. Exactly. So how much chances, should it be 99% or 99.999% that somebody is gonna hurt someone before they should be able to do something about it? Like, when is your life exactly in danger? Or when are you about to get harmed? Like, sure, maybe that 0.0001% is significant for someone else, but it's not necessary for everybody, because there's a lot of people out there who are natural gamblers who just wants to risk it all. Like, people who go to rock climbing, they know that there's a 20% chance that they'll at least fall to their deaths, but they still do it regardless, because they just think, after thinking about it rationally, that it's totally worth it. And is that rational or is that irrational? But who's gonna be the one to judge whether it's rational or irrational? Who's gonna be the one to make that decisions? According to Arthur Mill, it should be the people. Neko Miki should. According to Arthur Mill, it should be the individual, because the individual should be the ones to have that kind of right. But if that's the case, then why then is it ever right for a state to be able to prevent any form of harm? Because you have to be able to be pretty certain that, you mean one person? I am fair. You mean one person? No. Like, the individuals themselves. Like, the only person that can reason for themselves that, oh yeah, the 80% chance of me falling to my death is worth it and should not be prevented, is the person. Which is why Arthur Mill goes to say that those people should be allowed to climb as many mountains as he wants, or like go on to as many roads as he wants without having a single helmet and all that kind of stuff. He should be allowed to do all of it. But if that's the case, then when is the government ever allowed to partake or like do something? You know? Like, if some people think that going out of their way to having no helmet is okay, then yeah, sure. Then when is the state ever allowed to actually do something? What, like, because they themselves don't know what it means to be rational, you know? Like, what does it mean? Human experiments? Human experimentation is much more complicated than you think, because, well, if you go back to the idea of utilitarianism, then you can argue that so long as that person who's experimented on, after you experimented on, the research that you gain from that experiment allows you to save more lives than that just single one person, then it's technically for the greater good. So under utilitarianism, that should be totally allowed. Now, that is, and under Kantianism, that's really, really wrong, because either way, you're still killing someone else for the benefit of other people. But that just goes into show that, yeah, is it rational for you to experiment on human beings to, like, you know, be able to help millions of other lives? And who decides that? Should the individual decide that for themselves? That's fun. I don't know about that. Yeah, just what kind of restrictions should be allowed, you know? Now, there's a couple of principles that Arthur Mill goes into that says that there are certain cases where liberty should be prevented, and that includes the harm principle, the offense principle, the justice principle, moral principles, pretty much a lot of different principles that all have pretty much the exact same issue. And that just all involves the idea that whoever decides when does someone get offended, when someone gets harmed, when someone is unjust, when someone is immoral, who decides all that? And under any kind of philosophy, the first thing that people always should ask is like who decides it? Like, who's the one that? It's an important concept, and there's a good reason why people want like absolutes, but at the end of the day, it needs to be somebody that decides all this. So who does it? Now, if you were to go into more details about this, there are definitely certain ways that and some sacrifice. Yeah, and some sacrifices too. Yeah, you have to think about the sacrifices. Now, if we can go into more details about the different methods that's been coming up about how people come to this kind of agreements. If you guys have watched some of my other streams about philosophy, we discussed about, like, for example, making a contract between other people to figure out between each other that, oh yeah, let's come to an agreement to say that this is what it means to harm other people, and this is when the state should be allowed to do something about it. And or some people argue for complete absolute power. For example, it's the person who should be allowed to decide when someone is getting harmed is just whoever has the power to do so. So like the person who's like so smart and so absolutely perfect that compared to everybody else, that everybody would want to follow that individual and then listen to him for like, because he is the definition of right, which goes into debates about gods and all that kind of stuff, which we will just leave it at the side for now. But all of these questions still tries to answer about legitimacy, but not necessarily about whether whose perspective is right. For example, just because you made a contract between each individual to come to an agreement doesn't necessarily mean that the majority is necessarily correct. And it also depends on like how much you actually want liberty and how much you just want security over else. And that is very subjective, and which pretty much nobody can come to an exact same level, right? Like, you might want more freedom while I want more security, and I'm willing to give up more rights in order to be more secure while you yourself don't want to do that. And yeah, just we can't exactly come to an agreement, but that's exactly why we have these kind of discussions in the first place, so that like we can come to an agreement in some ways, but not in this session. Yeah, you guys are free to disagree as much as you want, and I would not be offended at all. Yeah, so for now, we have. Yeah, just. Yeah, liberty itself is a very big discussion, and I hope you guys were able to like really see this. Like, no matter what kind of perspective you guys agree to or like want to believe in, the thing about liberty is the fact that we all want it, and everybody wants as much liberty for themselves as possible. But just like in the state of nature, we also don't really want other people to have this exact same freedom because, like I said about the state of nature, we can't exactly, tell whether or not those other people would use their liberties to do something bad. But what it means to do something bad is very, very limited. I'll give you an example for like, um, if somebody were to say that they really really like murder, for example, and they should be free to murder as many people as they want, and yeah, that's but is he so like for example we might think that he's completely crazy, and probably he is definitely crazy, but if he were to suggest that like that's his liberty, that's his right, what an amazing world. What an amazing world. Who should like what kind of authority figure should prevent him from doing that? And keep in mind that the only way you can prevent somebody else from like committing those atrocities is by taking away their liberty. So who should do it? Who should do it? Because everybody has different desires and everybody has different wants, and some wants are much more dangerous to have than others. And for example, you yourself think that maybe taxing other people for them to like give you money is a good thing because you yourself are poor, and then you just think that it's so unfair um for the people at the top to not give you back certain things. And you can even go as far as to say that's causing you harm because inequality causes you harm. But at the exact same time, people at the top is gonna say, "Well, I should have the freedom to have what I deserve, and what I deserve is what I have. And if you were to take that away from me and in order to give it to yourself, then you're causing me harm." So as Neko Miki has suggested, it also goes back to sacrificing because somebody has to lose out in these kind of situations. Because like I said, the amount of natural resources is quite limited, and yeah, there's an argument to suggest that everybody can have equal things, like everybody can all be equal in the case of like natural resources. But uh we've already discussed the problems with that argument in Marxist when I was talking about Marxism, so you guys can go check that out. But basically just who is the one to like reallocate all those kind of things. Everyone trying to live in a human world is yeah, it's very complicated, not gonna lie, cause need to be under laws of humans. You are already in the laws of humans, okay? You are already in, because um if you have to like, let's just think about if you want to like program humans, like how would you really want to program it? The state is basically in a way trying to control its people, and to a certain extent it's not that different from like programming a robot. I'm not suggesting that people don't have enough freedom to consider themselves not robots, but at the end of the day, that's what controlling means. Like, at least to a certain extent, program them in a way that it will benefit someone or something or the collective good. But who's the programmer? Like, who's the one that actually does the programming? Should it be the state or should it be the individual? Because somebody has to figure out what it means to be under a state. The one who pay more. That is hard to argue against, but sure. Guess that works as well. Money. Yeah, I guess that works as well. So Arthur Mill basically says that liberty is very important, but as I've suggested, there's a lot of problems with liberty, and the fact that regardless of what happens, we can't exactly link liberty while at the same time wanting to protect people. It's a very good cause to want both. Like, you want people to feel safe, but at the same time you don't want to like restrict them. So Arthur Mill is trying to say that there's a possibility to do both at the same time, but as I've suggested, it's much more difficult than that. It's much more difficult because the act of preventing other people from doing something is what prevents liberty in the first place. But if you want to prevent harm, that's probably what you need to do. Nothing is impossible. Tell that to all the philosophers. Tell that to the hundreds of years of philosophers that try to debate about this. It's like with money, money. Okay. If you wanna go down that route, then money itself is also controlled by the state. Or like, if you are a Marxist, you'll say that it's the elites that control all the rights and wrongs. So it's them that decides that. So it's gonna be like, because people are gonna get so angry that it's the elites that control it. I mean, liberty can be dependent on money. Explain that for me. Sorry, try to explain that for me. Liberty can be bought. I don't know about that. That's a lot more political than philosophical, but maybe that makes sense. Like, you can argue that rich people have more like rights than poor people do. People does not want to kill people because they do not want to go to jail. Oh, yeah, I understand what you mean. Mm-hmm. And have a line red line in the name. Yeah. That's what it means for a state to be a monopolize of legitimate government, legitimate violence. It's how, yeah. That's how, because you can't prevent someone from doing something without actually having consequences, right? I think that like that. Yeah, because most people will not go against something if you are not gonna be able to face some kind of consequences. And that's how, by having monopoly of violence, that's how governments and that's how states push consequences on those people that believe they're going out of the line. And that's why a state is important, because, well, they need to monopolize violence in order for it to have the power to enact the things that they desire. And what's the thing that they desire is, under liberty, is to like prevent harm. But as I said, it's kind of hypocritical in certain senses to prevent harm by threatening people to harm themselves. But assuming that you are okay with the state monopolizing violence, and you are okay over you living under a state of nature where everybody can enact violence on you, then you can say the real question from that point on is when that violence is legitimate. And liberty and protecting liberty is apparently the only time when violence should be legitimate. For example, if somebody prevents you from going into a restaurant, then the state should probably be preventing that, because someone is trying to like prevent you from going to your liberty. Government is under money. Yeah. We have 7 minutes left. So in the 7 minutes, let's finish our discussion with ideas of freedom of speech and expression. So, under Arthur Mill, no, 7 minutes. Freedom of speech is very important. And you guys probably can see why. Because, like I said, people themselves are the ones that... It's such a rare chance for me to make sense. Why, you want to stick with about the government is under money? Government is under money. Government controls money, and government is the one that like incentivizes that. If you don't do as I say, then you will not get the benefits of the state. And capitalism is considered the benefits of the state. No more. Like, I am surprised that I am making sense here. No, don't be. Like, in philosophy, there's really no wrong answer. I know sometimes you're joking, but like, I'm telling you right now, every single comment that you've made makes, at least to me, makes a little bit of sense. Like, all of them makes a lot of sense. Like, there's no such thing as right and wrong in philosophy. Like, that's the only thing that, when you guys come to these sessions, that's the only thing that I want you guys to agree with. Just like, so that we can all keep an open mind. My job is pointless. No, it's not. Don't say that about that. No. It's so fine. What I mean by little is the fact that my argument also makes very little sense. So everybody makes little sense. Everybody makes very little sense, and it all depends on your kind of perspectives and what kind of thing that you find more important than others. And making even a little sense is already makes you pretty much on the same level of every single philosopher. Like everyone cannot agree all. Yeah, everyone cannot agree all. But if you want to continue on with that about money, is the fact that under states, if you want, the idea is that if you want to have benefits according to the state, and if you want to live under state and you want to like prosper with them benefits, then you need to be able to face the consequences of you not reaching their agreements. For example, you benefit under state by living under capitalism. So by working under a state, you get money, and that you can use that money to spend on things that you want. However, if you were to commit a crime under that state, then the state has the right to take away your right to make money in their state, and then force you to face the consequences of your actions by forcing you to go into jail, and then making you pay some kind of price by that I mean for them to take away some benefits that they have granted to you and taking them away, which is what happens to many jails and felons. That's so. But it's the idea is that you have if you agree with the idea of contractualism, that you have consented to the state, then it's not necessarily wrong, because you yourself have gone out of your way to break your agreement, break your promise with the state, that you will abide by the laws while you're under their regulations, while they themselves, for your help, will give you some benefits in return. So many vocab today. It's very simple. Just imagine someone you promise somebody that I'll give you some mangoes, and then in return you give me some avocados. Okay? However, if you just give them your mangoes and they never give you an avocado, then from that point on, you will consider that they have broken your contract, that they broken your promise. So you will never from that point on give them mangoes, because you know for a fact that they have broken their promise. What a fair deal. It's just an example. Now that also depends on whether or not you agree with the idea of contractualism, which we'll get to in probably another stream. But basically, you probably have never consented to a state at all. If you guys are interested in that, I'll probably make another stream maybe the day after tomorrow, because unfortunately, like I said, I will probably be not be able to play some games for the next few weeks, and I'll probably only be doing just chatting sessions, or not necessarily philosophy, but at least because I will be dead. I will only be able to stream for 1 hour because I'm kind of busy. So, but anyways, we have 3 minutes left. Why? It's okay. It's okay. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I'm just improving. I'm just trying to do something. It's not. It's so completely unrelated to streaming that it's okay. No, I mean you're busy. Makes sense. Nah. It's just an excuse. But you can't. You're so understanding. You are way too understanding. I thank you, but really, it's not as bad as it seems. But yeah, I'll probably only be able to make just chatting streams. It's really nothing to be apologetic about, but I'll just say it. But okay. I'm sorry, but just get used to it. I also, because like I said, I also need to practice some of more. Need to be understandable. Yeah, okay, I agree. But basically, I also want to make more sessions for this week, because I also want to be able to learn how to communicate ideas better, so that I can make better philosophy streams like this. Because like I said, we're gonna be tackling a lot more different ideas in the future, and then if I jumble up every single time, then it's not gonna be much help for anybody. So it's also for me to practice and get better at it. And I'm still nowhere there yet, and I still need a long way to go. But I think I'm getting the hang of it. I'm not really sure. We'll discuss about freedom of expression in another stream, I guess. It's quite complicated. unfortunately, I also need to read a lot more, don't I? I hate reading. I hate reading so much. Can you guys read stuff for me so that you guys can start the discussion next time? I don't really mind if anybody has like ideas or philosophies or like even like anything, to be honest. Like philosophy, I just say philosophy, but it can be pretty much anything. Like I can like discussing about anything, to be honest. But anyways, guys, I hope you guys have enjoyed. Unfortunately, while I was doing a philosophy session, that's why you like to talk about philosophy when you hate reading. Mm, I am that's a bit racist to non-readers like me. What are you talking about? I'm just kidding. But anyways, guys, unfortunately, I have lost one follower while I'm making this philosophy stream, which is making me a bit complicated. Hello. Yeah, so funny, right? So if you have not followed yet, then please do so. Seriously, I have been stuck on 45 followers for like years now. I'll make up for it. Aww, thank you. Thank you, you're the best. But seriously, who unfollowed me? Who unfollowed me? Okay. That's such a nice band-aid. That's such a nice band-aid. Anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for Xsun K9 for joining our streams. I'll stream the day after tomorrow as well. I hope you guys join me then as well. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. And Nekomiki, thank you for keeping me company. I always appreciate that too. And love you guys. Take care. Bye. Be safe.